I'm in the middle of creating a movie collection system. The movie collection system is going to let me store up to 100 movies where each movie has a title, ID, and a length. And we're almost done. We have the ability now to add movies, we have the ability to find and update movies, and I've done a little bit of work to tidy things up so that we now have a main menu where we can go through and add, I can print and update as I want. And so I've run the system so far down here to give us what we saw before. So in our code, we've organized things around a movie collection, which has a size and a number of movies, where each movie is a struct that contains a title, an ID, and a length. So each movie, title, ID, and a length, stored within a larger struct where we have an array of movies, which are our individual movie elements, and we keep track of how many we've got. We keep track of the size. And so that's our my collection value down here in main. So my movie collection stored in the variable my collection looks like this in memory. I initialize the number of elements to 0, and now I read in an option from the main menu, and while that is not the quit, we go through and we can either add, print, or find and update movies. So at the moment, if we go through here, I can print out the movies, and we can see that I've got the movies that match what we're seeing in memory over here. Okay. I can also add another movie. So if I add a movie now, 39 maybe, movie, I don't know, I'm out of inspiration, test, we can put in the length of the movie. And now if we print out the movies, we can see we've got all 3 of those movies. I can update the movie. So if I update the movie with ID 39, that's our test movie. So I can update the title. Let's call it Lord of the Rings, that'll do. And I don't need to update anything else. If I print the movies now, we can see we've got all of those movies in there. So I can add movies, I can update an individual movie, we can find movies, I can print them all out. Now, one thing that I wanted to do here is, in my program, I wanted to be able to print out in the main menu, I've got that there's 3 movies, and I want to print out the total length. So if we have a look up here in my read main menu function, I've got the main menu printing out, and we're printing out the size of the movies. So that's being able to access this. So from the collection, which is the name of the variable we have here, I can access the size to print that out. And here I want to be able to print out the total length of those movies. So what's the total length? So I'm going to create a total length function up the top here. Now this is the same as before. I want to now sum the lengths of all of the movies. Again, remember, whenever I think all, what I've got to think is, how do I do that for each element? And the way I can do that for each element is to use a cumulative sum. So I've got my result here, which I start initially at 0. And what I want to do now is I can use my trusty for loop to say for each. So for each element, so for I is equal to 0, while I is less than the size of the collection, then I increment I at the end of the loop. So that's going to give me that loop that goes 0, 1, 2. So 0, 1, when it gets to 2, it will stop. And in my collection with 3, it would print that one out as well, of course. And so here what I want to do is now add the length of that movie to my cumulative sum. So the result is 0 to start with, and I want to add to that. So the result becomes equal to the result plus the length of that movie in the database. So my collection is where I want to go. So I go to collection to get to the length of the movie. So I want to get this value here, or I want to get that value there. I have to go to my collection. I access the movies array. I access the individual element that I want. And here I'm using this variable I to be the index for me so that it changes over time. And each time through, I add the length. And there we go. So very simple ability now to loop through and calculate the total length of all of our movies. Now, of course, I have to quit. And if I compile that again and rerun that now, we can see that the total length is 0 and I have 0 movies. I can add 1 movie. So we'll add that movie 1. There we go. And now we have the total length of the movies. Adding correctly. So we can see the total length is 1.27. If I add another movie, so movie ID 27, IT length 1.5, now we can see that that is also being added in. So we have the total length there, and I can add more movies. So if I add another movie, and we can do, there we go, and we can see that that total length is printing out. I can see all of the movies. We can update a movie. Oops, we can update a movie, and if I update the movie 1, so I'm updating the ET movie, I can update the length of that, the new length, 9.2, and now we can see if I exit out of that, when we go back, the length is being updated and is correctly calculated. We can print out all the movies, and that's it, I'm done. So what I suggest you do, have another go at implementing something like the total length for your individual example. You'll need to go through, add something like the main menu. So for that, I just, as we've done before, I created an enumeration with the different options I wanted in the menu. I was then able to read the menu. And in this case, I wanted to display things from the collection. So I needed to pass the collection in. So I've got my movies here. And then we can just return the value. And I'm using my handy read integer function, which lets me check the read integer range. So that will do the validation of that for me, which is quite nice. And then inside main, you'll need to make sure to use your new read main menu function to read in the menu options. And then you can loop while the user hasn't chosen to quit and perform these different actions here. If I was going to add another action, what I would do is I would add that action to my menu. So if I wanted to be able to delete, I'll add the option to the enumeration, and then inside here, I would need to be able to write that out. I would update how many values we're going to read from here. And so 5 would be quit. 4 could be delete. And so if we come in here now, I could now very simply add in that new delete option. So I could do main delete here, and you would implement it by creating a new procedure or a new function, as we've done before. Always, if you have an identifiable action, put it in its own function. You can then reuse it later. It'll make your life and everybody else's life so much easier. So now, if we compile and rerun that, we would see we have that new ability to delete movies, but obviously at this point, it's coming soon. Something that you can add, and there's instructions on how to do things like delete in the Programmer's Field Guide. I hope you enjoy working with that, and I look forward to seeing what you're able to create. Thank you.